Reading book on pausing and institutions. Written by me, Eric Wadell. First draft, February 2026. Chapter 7. Long-term situation. When we make plans for or feel urgency about our long-term future. Pausing, institutions, and long-term. Our long-term situation is when we think about our future. The future is certain in that it will come, but uncertain in how it will be. When we pause and contemplate the discrepancy between this certain future and its uncertain content, we find ourselves in our long-term situation. It makes us both worry and feel a sense of urgency. "40,000 years ago, our institutions were coherent in that they all existed as part of one and the same total institution, namely our tribe. Any and every institution that we were part of were in its own turn a part of this one tribe. So like that, we never had to contemplate what our long-term goal should or should not be. It was always clear to us, the success of the tribe. "40,000 years ago, our long-term goal was unambiguously passed on to us by our tribe. 40,000 years ago, my long-term goal was the same as your long-term goal, given that we were both part of the same tribe. So, by this reasoning, our sense of worry or urgency about our future was never really about what goal we should or should not have. To worry about the very nature of our long-term goal came later, as the nature of our institutions changed. Today, though, we worry about what our goal should be. And that is because we do not have any total institution like the one we had in the old days. Today, we only have quasi-total institutions. Institutions that are somewhat resembling the old tribes, but not fully functioning as they did. It is common in our modern days that we instead must consciously try to find what popularly may be called our tribe. And much advertising and propaganda use this as their main selling point. But even though we practically have a hard time trying to live in such a total tribe today, we still have ancestors. And those ancestors still have passed on their goals to us, albeit in more complex forms. We may here talk about us inheriting an ancestral goal. In addition to this inherited ancestral goal, we also intellectually know that we may make progress by animating a personal choice goal. Like this, our long-term situation is in large part about pausing within the tension between guarding our inherited ancestral goal of old, all the while animating a choice goal of new. We pause and dwell within our inherited ancestral goal, as well as within our search for a personal choice goal. Pausing in our long-term situation. Pausing in our long-term situation is about bridging our past, present, and future. It is difficult to assemble our lives in any way that feels fully coherent to us. It is difficult to feel like a whole person. Nonetheless, the ambition to at least try our best to feel coherent, to feel like a whole person, is perhaps the most rewarding ambition that we may have. Often, life does its utmost to scatter us into many separate pieces, and our ambition then becomes to find personal and creative ways to reassemble those pieces. Often, this is unglamorous work, but still, it is the most rewarding work that we may do. In chapter 1, we found that pausing is a natural behavior of ours that we have done throughout all of time. We pause spontaneously as a natural reaction to life, whenever it makes any effort to try to scatter us. Through its very nature, life scatters, and we reassemble through pausing. Or, expressed differently, the scattering and reassembling of life is connected by pausing. To pause in our long-term situation is not about ever becoming fully whole. That is not possible. To pause in our long-term situation is, however, about acknowledging both our wholeness and scatteredness, such as they are. I have areas of life where I feel scattered, and you have areas where you feel scattered. I have areas of life where I feel whole, and you have areas where you feel whole. Pausing with our long-term goal, coherence, is how we bridge where we have been with where we are, as well as with where we are going. How then does our dual loyalty to the institutions of today and of old relate to our long-term goal, coherence? How do we combine our ancestral goal with our choice goal into one coherent whole? Dual loyalty to institutions and long-term. To work towards a sense of coherence in life is best done by taking our steps in accordance with a consistent sense of manageability. Whenever a situation simply is too difficult for us to manage, we lose our sense of coherence. So, if we wish to feel more coherent, then by logic we should make choices that feel manageable. Not too difficult, but not too easy either. This way, we find a way in life which is both unique and coherent. Manageability, then, is the characteristic quality that we will look for in our choices. Most institutions of today, however, do not make it easy. Do not make it easy for us to guard or perpetuate our inherited ancestral goal. Many times they scatter the wishes of our ancestors more than they facilitate their maintained coherence. So this places the task more heavily upon our own shoulders. The dual loyalty when it comes to institutions and our long-term situation is then, on the one hand, about guarding and perpetuating the goals of our ancestors that is already present in our institutions, and on the other hand, about animating new goals for our institutions. This is how we add our personal contribution to history. At any given moment, we may pause and ask ourselves what our next step should be. When faced with a certain institution, we may pause and ask ourselves if it may be lacking in coherence for our ancestors' wishes, or for our own personal goals, or even in both. A lot of this comes down to competitiveness and ambition on our part. A lot of this comes down to how strongly we feel both about our heritage and individual person. When combining our competitiveness with a strategy of manageability, we get a solidly long-term approach. And by pausing, that combination is made practically more realistic to fulfill. We pause and find our dual loyalty when it comes to our long-term situation to be the old emotional loyalty, being to guard our ancestral goal, coherence, and our new intellectual loyalty, being to animate our choice goal, coherence.